Magic Tea House, Book Number 52. A Merlin Mission. Soccer on Sunday, by Mary Pope Osborne. Chapter 5. High in the Sky. When the doors opened, Roberto led Annie and Jack off the tram. They walked down the ramp from the station and headed into the huge parking area. Aztec Stadium is named for the people who built an empire in this part of Mexico many hundreds of years ago, said Roberto. Really? Said Jack. He'd read about the Aztec Empire. He could imagine the enormous stadium being similar to an Aztec pyramid. Thousands of spectators flooded the parking lot. They wore bright summer clothes and wide-brimmed hats. Vendors walked among the big cars, selling Brazilian, Italian, and Mexican flags. Kids were waving souvenir programs, soccer shirts, and caps for sale. Jack and Annie followed Roberto to the nearest entrance, and Annie held out their 2 tickets. That way, Gate G, a stadium official said. He pointed toward one of the other entrances. When Roberto showed his ticket, the man pointed in the same direction. Hooray! I hope I'm sitting near you, said Roberto. Me too, said Jack. Jack, Annie, and Roberto followed a crowd through Gate G and into the giant stadium. They all looked up at the stands. Dozens of tiers of seats rose above the green soccer field. The rows were so steep it looked as if spectators in the highest rows might fall straight down onto the field. This place is huge, said Jack. Where do we go now? Said Annie. My father said I should ask an official, said Roberto, looking around. Over there. He led Jack and Annie to an usher in uniform, standing at the bottom of an aisle. Can you please tell us where our seats are? Annie asked, showing her ticket to the woman. When the woman looked at the ticket, her eyes grew wide. You have some of the best seats in the stadium, she said. She pointed to the section closest to the field. Over there, second row right on the aisle. Yay, said Jack. The guard at the embassy had been right. They did have incredible seats. Incredible seats. Seats that would help them get close enough to Pelé to learn a secret of greatness from him. Jack turned excitedly to Roberto. Where's your seat? He asked. Roberto showed his ticket to the usher. Where do I go? He asked. Well, you are in the same line as your friends, the woman told Roberto. Fantastic, he said with a big grin. But I'm afraid your seat is in a different section, said the usher. She pointed all the way up. It's near the very top, high up in the sky. The smile left Roberto's face, but then it returned. I'd better go, he said. It was great to meet you. You too, said Jack. Goodbye, Jack and Annie, said Roberto, and he started up the steep steps to the top of the stadium. Roberto, wait, Annie called, and she hurried up the steps after him. Jack followed her. Listen, I want to trade seats with you, she said. She held out her ticket. Really? Thought Jack. What about our mission? Oh, no, I cannot, said Roberto. Yes, you can, said Annie. Please, we have to trade seats. But why? Asked Roberto. Because it's your birthday, said Annie. "And if you have a good seat, you can tell your 8 brothers and sisters and your parents all about the game. So it will be like 11 people are getting a good seat, not just one." "That actually makes sense," thought Jack. Still, he was amazed by Annie's generosity. "But no, I cannot," said Roberto. "But yes, you can," said Annie. She grabbed Roberto's ticket and put her own ticket in his hand. "You guys have fun." She started up the stairs. Jack felt a wave of guilt. "Wait, stop. That's not fair," he said to Annie. "Maybe I should give up my seat." "No, it's okay. I'll give up mine," said Annie. Roberto laughed. "You are both too kind," he said. "I cannot take either of your seats." Roberto handed Annie her ticket and took his back. "No, please, I want," Annie protested. "Wait, I have another idea," Jack said to Annie. "We can take turns. I'll switch with Roberto for the first half, and you switch with him for the second half." "Perfect," said Annie. "That way, Roberto can get a great view of the whole game, and you and I will each get a great view for half the time." "Right." Jack pulled the ring of truth off his finger. He slipped it into Annie's hand and spoke softly to her. "The person who's sitting close to the field should wear this. Be sure to check it if you think you've discovered Pele's secret." "Got it," Annie said, putting the ring on her finger. "I'll give it back to you at halftime." "Right," said Jack. "How long is halftime, Roberto?" 15 minutes. "Plenty of time," said Jack. He looked at his seat number. A26. "Okay, I'll find you at seat A26, Annie. Wait for me." Then he swapped tickets with Roberto. "Thank you a million times, Jack," said Roberto. "No problem," said Jack. "See you guys later." And he started up the stairs. "Have fun in the sky," called Annie. "I will." Jack felt great as he started up the steps to the top of the stands. He was sure he'd done the right thing, especially since it was Roberto's birthday. But as Jack climbed higher and higher, his spirits fell. The stands were so high, he wondered if he'd be able to see anything. By the time he reached the top rows, he was out of breath. He showed his ticket to an usher, and she pointed toward his seat. Jack squeezed past people and collapsed on the bench. From his seat, the field looked a million miles away. How can anyone enjoy the game from up here? He wondered. He wished huge stadium screens had been invented so everyone could see the game well. The spectators around Jack seemed to be having a good time anyway. A couple and their 2 children were eating tacos and drinking sodas. Others were waving small multicolored flags. A teenage boy next to Jack was looking through a pair of large binoculars. A man with a bushy mustache held a scratchy-sounding portable radio. Jack could hear the sportscaster through the static. "Final World Cup Championship. 1 billion people around the world are watching on television, and over 100,000 spectators are here in Aztec Stadium today." "Here they come," shouted the boy, looking through binoculars. Suddenly, all the spectators let out a roar. The 2 soccer teams were running onto the field. "Italy's incredible team has blue shirts and white shorts," the teenager with binoculars shouted. "Brazil's beautiful team, yellow shirts, blue shorts. Pele is number 10. Jack couldn't see the colors of any uniforms, much less any numbers. "Kick off! And there Pele goes!" the commentator on the crackly radio yelled. "Pele! There! Where? Jack wondered. He really wanted to see Pele the Great, but from his seat high up in the sky, the players on the field looked no bigger than ants. The radio commentator shouted excitedly about the game. Jack could only catch pieces of what he was saying. "What a pass! Carlos Alberto, captain of Brazil's team, hitting a very long ball. Dangerous free kick situation. Italy 0, Brazil 0. With every play, everyone in the huge stadium screamed, whistled, cheered, or booed. Then thousands of Brazil fans jumped to their feet, pumping their fists in the air and screaming, 'Goal!' Jack jumped to his feet too. The teenager with the binoculars shouted. Pele leaped past the defender. He hit the ball and scored. Jack shook his head. He couldn't believe he'd missed seeing Pele make a goal. He really wished he had binoculars. He really wished he were sitting with Annie and Roberto. Everyone sat down. Jack listened as carefully as he could to the voice of the radio commentator. "Free kick! Way up! Beautiful! No wonder Brazil is called the beautiful team. Punching that one away. Dead ball." Nothing the sportscaster said sounded like a secret of greatness to Jack. He just hoped Annie was paying close attention to the game and checking the ring a lot. Even though he was envious, Jack was still glad that Roberto had a great view of the game. If he was sitting up here, Jack thought, he'd have nothing to report to his 8 brothers and sisters. Suddenly, thousands of Italy fans leapt to their feet, screaming, and the older kid with binoculars shouted, "Italy scores! Brazil won! Italy won!" Jack couldn't wait to switch seats with Annie and watch the game up close. If the ring hadn't glowed for her, it would all be up to him. As soon as the radio announcer said, "Halftime," Jack looked at his watch. It was 12:45. He had 15 minutes to find Annie and Roberto. Jack squeezed past the people sitting in his row and took off down the mountain of stairs. Chapter 6. Annie, Roberto. Jack raced down the steep stadium steps, trying to get ahead of the crowd. But by the time he reached the middle section, he had to slow down. The aisle was packed with people buying sodas and flags and soccer caps from vendors. Jack couldn't get past the human traffic jam. He kept looking at his watch as he waited for the steps to clear. After almost 5 minutes, he squeezed through a gap in the crowd. 8:26, 8:26, he repeated as he struggled to get down to the sections near the playing field. Finally, Jack reached the last rows of Section A. "Annie, Roberto," he whispered as he looked down the steep rows of seats. All the wide-brimmed hats made it impossible to see. "Annie, Roberto," Jack yelled. "Annie, Roberto." There was no sign of them anywhere. Jack hadn't expected all the hats or all the people milling around, standing, chatting, talking to neighbors, coming and going. Jack looked at his watch again. There were 5 minutes left until the end of halftime. Stadium officials were telling everyone to return to their seats. "Take your seats. Halftime's almost over. Take your seats." Jack didn't know what to do. Suddenly he was caught in another traffic snarl as people started climbing back up to the higher tiers. "Keep moving!" an usher shouted at everyone. "Keep moving!" A huge roar came from the crowd. The players were taking their positions again. Kick off! The second half of the game began. The Brazilian and Italian soccer stars were running in all directions. Even peering through the crowd, Jack loved watching them up close. Suddenly, an usher was by his side. "Where's your ticket?" the man asked. "Now's my chance," thought Jack. He showed his ticket. "Please help me. I'm looking for A26, he said. "My sister, A26? That's not your seat. Your seat's at the top," the stadium official said. "Please go there now." "But," started Jack. "There's no time," barked the frazzled man. "The game has started again. Go back to your seat." Jack did as the official said. "Annie won't know why I didn't show up," he thought as he climbed the steep steps. "She'll be really worried." He kept peering back down at the first rows of Section A, looking for Annie and Roberto. Finally, Jack arrived back at the top of the stadium. He felt frustrated and anxious as he sat down in his seat. Not only would he never get a good look at the World Cup players now, but how was he going to find Annie again? Jack wished he had a cell phone, but he knew cell phones hadn't been invented yet. How did people ever find each other in 1970? He wondered. As the fans of the Brazilian team kept whistling and cheering, Jack caught more snatches of the radio commentary. "Brazil attacks. Gerson scores long, low shot. Brazil keeps attacking, passing, dribbling." Jack barely listened to the game anymore. He was too worried about what to do when it was over. If the stadium was hectic at halftime, it'll be insane when the championship game ends, he thought. He had Merlin's magic mist in his backpack. Should he use it now? He wondered. What great talent would help him find Annie? What great talent would help them accomplish their mission? "Pele follows with a hard shot," the radio commentator's voice crackled. "Here comes Alberto." As the game went on, Jack couldn't stop worrying about finding Annie. "She must be worried about finding me too," he thought. Knowing her, she might have tried to get help from the ushers or stadium guards. Maybe she talked to the police. Jack looked up and down the aisles for any officials who might be searching for him. 4 minutes left, the announcer finally yelled. "Tostão gets the ball," the teenager with binoculars yelled. "Someone passes to Pele. Now Jairzinho has it. Brazil drives the ball and scores." "As soon as it's over, I'll find seat A26, Jack thought. "I'll keep looking as long as I have to." Jack just hoped Annie would wait at her seat. He hoped she had discovered the secret of greatness during the game. He hoped Roberto would stick around and take them back to the U.S. Embassy. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by a huge roar from the crowd. "Final score 4-1. The beautiful team has won. Champions of the world. Best World Cup of all time." All the spectators around Jack were screaming and jumping up and down and hugging each other. As Jack squeezed past the people in his row, the sportscaster shouted from the radio, "Spectators are pushing past police and news reporters. Mobs are rushing onto the field. They are tearing off the players' shirts, their shoes. The fans have gone wild." Jack hoped that Annie wouldn't get impatient in all the chaos and leave her seat to look for him. They'd never find each other if they were both moving around. Pele's team members have hoisted him onto their shoulders. Celebrations will go on for days. The players will be honored at a giant banquet tonight in Mexico City. Excuse me, Jack mumbled as he tried to move past people in his row. He made his way through the crowd of celebrating fans and started down the steep stairs. He was bumped and pushed by people, spilling from the stands. He moved as quickly as he could so he wouldn't get trampled. Finally, Jack reached the lower section of seats. As he looked around, he was accidentally knocked over by rowdy teenagers dancing in the aisle, screaming and waving flags. He scrambled back to his feet and jumped onto a stadium bench. Finally, Jack saw them, Annie and Roberto. They were only a few rows in front of him. They too were standing on a bench, but they were facing the field, pumping their arms in the air and shouting and cheering along with the crowd. Jack was flooded with relief, but then he felt angry. What the heck, he thought. Annie wasn't searching for him at all. She didn't seem to be a bit worried. She looked like she was having a great time. Annie, Jack yelled. He hurried down to her. Annie! When Annie and Roberto turned and saw Jack, they waved happily. Oh, Jack, I'm so glad to see you, Annie shouted. We waited for you, but when you didn't come back, we figured your seat must have been okay. I hope it was. Well, actually, Jack shouted. Thanks so much for letting me keep my seat for the whole game, Annie shouted. Roberto and I had the best time. The game was incredible. Yes, Jack, shouted Roberto. I had the best time of my whole life, but I was worried about you. I hope your seat in the sky was good. Jack took a deep breath, and then, for the second time that day, he chose to do the right thing. Yeah, sure. My seat was good, he said with a sigh. It was fine, totally fine.